Hey, what's up, gentlemen and ladies? Today, I wanted to talk about the single worst developer in all of Square Enix. Now, let's start with your boy, Tetsuya Nomura. No, I don't actually think that Nomura is the worst developer at Square Enix. So, I mean, he did direct Kingdom Hearts 1, which has that shitty minigame where you have to get Pooh to fall on Eeyore's tail, and I may or may not have spent like half an hour on that minigame on stream.
I hate you, 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 I hate you. I hope Nomura fucking dies for designing this piece of shit, and whoever thought it was a good idea to include this in the fucking game. God!
I figured it can't be too hard to keep track of a donkey's tail, so let's pin the tail on the ass. Alright, so recently at PAX East, and by recently I mean like a week ago because I'm super late and everyone already talked about this because school is a stupid thing that I just gotta deal with, Square Enix revealed what's actually going to be in the second season of DLC for Final Fantasy XV, as well as when we're going to be getting it, and a lot of fans were really upset with this. I'm not going to go into all the details here, as I'm sure that you guys have probably already heard it all by now, but just in case you haven't, I'll leave a link to the articles in the description. If you for some reason still haven't seen them, go check them out. Now, the main thing that had a lot of people mad were, well, firstly, the fact that this is even here to begin with. I mean, they weren't really announcing anything that people weren't asking for, but the fact that they're still releasing content for this game kinda has a lot of people mad. And kind of in relation to that, there's the fact that we're not going to be getting any of this DLC until 2019, which the fact that the DLC might not end until 2019 was reason enough to get the crowd stirred up, but the fact that the second season won't even begin until 2019 has got a lot of people all but given up on this game. And I'm just kinda sitting here wondering, on the one hand, I see where Square is coming from. They want to add more story, more content to the game because they worked on it for 10 years and they want to try and please the fans since a lot of them were unhappy, especially in the months following the initial release. And let's not lie to ourselves, they're a company and they want to make money. But on the other hand, you have the fans that were waiting for those 10 years who, despite wanting a better product, also don't want them to keep adding things to the game to make it better, kind of like a, I guess, too little too late situation. And you end up in this weird limbo where the fans are unhappy, the devs are unhappy, the game sold well but hardcore players didn't like it, but it got good reviews, but it was split up among different spin-offs, but they're adding more content to make it better, but the fans don't want this new content, yet they keep buying it anyways. How did we get into this huge mess? Where did it all go wrong? Well, okay, this is actually a huge issue that requires a lot more than what I can get into in just one YouTube video, but let's break this down, starting with the updates and patches, which are a minor aspect of this huge problem, but still one that I think is worth talking about. I'm starting here because these are the things that actually affect the game directly. Most of the other major DLC episodes that we've gotten have been additional stories with their own gameplay, characters, and they don't really change much in terms of the game itself. The one exception to this, obviously, being the Royal Pack, but I'll get into that a bit later. Besides that, everything from Season 1 was additional extra content outside the main game, and really it's been the free updates and patches that have been adding to the main game itself. A lot of people say that 15 had no content when it first came out, which realistically, that's not true. A quick search on howlongtobeat.com will reveal that Final Fantasy XV's average playtime was actually a little under 30 hours for the main story, and over 50 hours for the main story plus extras. Now yes, that's no Witcher 3 with over 100 hours for main story plus extras, but it's still nothing to scoff over, and the thing that bothers me is this. Most people will look at all of these updates and look at all of these patches and say that, oh, that's just Tabata going back and trying to retroactively finish FF15 because it was released unfinished. Now, while it is true that parts of 15 were promised a long time ago, like character switching for example, but they were eventually added through updates, they had actually already confirmed that things like that would not be coming to the game itself. In fact, I'm pretty sure that that example specifically had been confirmed like a year before the game came out or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And if we just have a look at the update history of 15, you'll see that most of these updates add very minor things that the majority of fans didn't even really ask for. Like, you take a look at the most recent updates for 15, and what have they added? Oh, like some new items in the shop, new drills for the opening tutorial, an extra battle at the camp, a data log. Like, were these really things that were so crucial to the game that they were worth delaying it for another 2 years? And this is not me like hand-picking minor updates. Go check the FF15 update history on your PS4 for yourself. Most of them add very little to the main game. Now, I don't know, maybe these smaller things are important to you, like you would have liked the game to have been delayed until 2019 just so you could have that one extra drill during the tutorial, but for me personally, I think it was fine. Really, there's only 3 updates that I could see people making a legit argument for in terms of features that should have been included since day one. Other than, like, convenience features, of course. I'm not counting things like higher photo storage capacity or, like, the MP3 player on the Chocobos, because those don't really change the game too much. The first is character swapping, which once again is a feature that they had revealed would not be in the game since like 2015 or something like that. Now, I'm pretty sure that the only reason people expected character swapping was because it showed up during the 2011 vs 13 trailer. Because this is really kind of a weird feature. If you take a look at Square's other major action RPG game, Kingdom Hearts, you can't swap and play as Donald or Goofy, but you don't really see too many people complaining about it. Honestly, I can almost guarantee that the reason they held off on this feature is because they wanted to wait until the 3 character episodes released, which makes perfect sense to me. Wait until they have the system in place for playing as the 3 different characters, which is good for the developers, and it's also a nice surprise for the players as they're getting to know and feel the characters literally while they're actually getting to know their stories in their DLC episodes. The second is the Regalia Type D. Now, Tabata actually has talked about why this one was not included from the start. See, it was actually a lot harder to implement a car that was able to drive off-road in 15's very diverse environments. In fact, if you guys recall, the first time that they ever even teased a Regalia model that could go off-road, it actually got stuck on a rock during the presentation, so yeah. Kinda like warp striking outside of battles, it was something that they wanted to implement but were having a hard time with, so they weren't planning on it until eventually they figured out a way to do it. Which is why if you play any of the FF15 demos, you can't actually warp strike outside of battle. It wasn't originally going to be a feature since it caused so many glitches, but eventually they were able to figure it out, and you could do it in the final game. Same with the Type D. There's a reason why it had to be a monster truck with the ability to jump. It would get stuck on everything if it wasn't. And the final one is any additional cutscenes that they added to the game, like the one with Gentiana in Chapter 10, as well as pretty much the entirety of Chapter 13 verse 2. Now this one, I can kind of understand a bit more why people would be upset, because at first glance, it does seem like this is them going back and adding story to the game, but by the developer's own words, this is actually not the case. They actually wrote out the entirety of the story for the game, including perspectives that we don't get to see, such as character backgrounds. I mean, if you guys recall, the entire reason why we even got the Brotherhood anime series to begin with was because they had backstories for all the Chocobros just lying in Word documents on their computers, and they weren't going to do anything with them. Like, they were just kind of there. It's sort of a similar situation with these additional cutscenes, and I have the feeling, personally, that much of this has to do with the fact that they thought fans would piece things together a lot easier than they actually did. I mean, a lot of people were confused with the story of Chapter 13 and exactly what happened with Arden and what his backstory was. You know, they had to add all of these Shiva flashbacks so that we had any kind of clue what was going on, and they literally had to outright spell out for us multiple times who betrayed Arden, how he was related to him, and what the meaning of the name was, and they had to add all of these reports with Gladio and Ignace during Chapter 13 verse 2 so that we could piece together what was actually going on in the Empire during Chapter 13. I guess it all just kind of made sense to them since they were the ones who wrote it, but from the perspective of a player who's just listening to all of these things for the first time with no additional information, it's really hard to actually grasp all of this information that's just kind of thrown at you almost all at once. I mean, be honest, how many of you went to YouTube and looked up videos explaining the ending of 15 right after you beat it? I know that I was confused. My friend Rem had to break it down for me on the live stream. So these additional cutscenes, while they are important to understanding the story, I would not say that they were left out because the game was incomplete, but probably more so they thought that we could figure it out with a lot less information, but turns out that we did need them to outright spell it out for us because we're too dumb, I guess. But alright, that's enough on the updates. Let's talk about the DLC, specifically the 3 character episodes for Gladiolus, Prompto, and Ignace. A lot of people were mad at the fact that during the game there was some very clear moments where the characters just kind of leave for a while and then come back with something having happened, which is a very obvious, like, buy the DLC to find out type of moment. But here's the thing. The stuff that happens in the DLC doesn't actually really matter. Now, I know you're probably already down in the comments saying that I'm a stupid fanboy who is just trying to defend the game when they very clearly had some key plot points behind quote-unquote paywalls, but hear me out for just 1 second, okay? During episode Gladiolus, the most that happens is that we find out how Gladio got his second scar and where his katana came from. That's really it. And I don't know about you, but I personally could not have slept if I did not know how he got that scar. I mean, I know that, like, the Star Scourge is a thing, and Arden working with Ifrit and Regis and the Luciae, but forget all that, okay? The only thing that I care about is Gladio's scar. That's a key plot point right there. Except it's not really, not at all. Like, Episode Gladiolus is the quintessential definition of side content, extra bonus material that is not necessary for the main game. Now, some people argue that there's a bit of growth for Gladio's character, and in fact that's true of all 3 episodes, but I'll talk about that at the end. For now, let's talk Prompto. Now, in this story, Prompto falls off a train on enemy territory, and then we find him held prisoner by the Empire. That's a pretty logical sequence of events. We really have no reason to assume that anything too important happens between these 2 points, but I already know what everyone is going to point to. Versteel. Yes, we get to find out the story of Versteel, what actually happened to him, how he was tied to Prompto, and we get to see him die. But let me bring up a counter-argument against this. You don't see very many people arguing that the Assassin's Festival is key to the story, right? No, of course not. Clearly, it was just a collaboration that Square had with Ubisoft, and the story was just added just for the sake of having a story, right? Right? Well, honestly, yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with this, except for the fact that according to everyone, episode Prompto was important because we got to see more of Versteel and actually fight him, when at the same time, on the Assassin's Festival, we get to see more of Loki, and we get to fight him. And you might be saying, but Dean, I mean, you can't compare Versteel and Loki. Versteel is clearly a way more important character. To which I have to ask, what makes you say that? If you actually look at pure screen time during Final Fantasy XV, we got a cutscene with Loki, followed by a fight with him in a Magitech suit, and then he comes back later in the game during one of the base missions where you get to fight him again. Compared to Versteel, who shows up a total of 1 time during a cutscene. That's right, we never even get to see his model during gameplay, and in the entire game, he has 1 miserable line. Oh, don't get me wrong, guys, I understand perfectly well why you had this impression that Versteel was a much more important character than what he really was. It's because he showed up on the E3 2013 trailer and was at the end during the collage, isn't it? Because we had 3 years to speculate what this character was gonna be. I mean, they showed him off, so he must be important, right? He's probably gonna be like a main character, one of the main villains. In fact, I bet that he's gonna be one of the multiple fights towards the end of the game. Right? Wow, it's almost as if the long wait time made us over-speculate and set our expectations so unreasonably high for this game that there was no way they could be met. Nah, I'm sure the game was just trash. And finally, there's episode Ignace, which is the only one where I could kind of see where this argument is coming from. Not because of Ravis, okay? Most people just kind of assume that at some point Ravis was betrayed by the Empire and turned into a demon. We didn't really need to have him here. It is nice to know, don't get me wrong, all of these extras included in these episodes are nice to have. I'm not saying that I don't want them, but they're not as important as everyone makes them out to be. However, if there's one point that this applies to, it's Ignace going blind, okay? Admittedly, well, once again, this is not like the most important thing to know. I mean, knowing how he went blind doesn't really add anything to the story, but it is a pretty major character change, and it does affect it. Now again, let me be clear. Ignace going blind affects the story, not us knowing how Ignace went blind, okay? I just want to make that clear distinction. And I mean, most people just kind of assume that it had something to do with Arden anyways, which it did. Like, it's not like what actually happened in the episode was so mind-blowing and unexpected that we just had to see it. Like, he fights Arden. Yeah, it's cool knowing that it was because of the ring, and it does add some characterization to Ignace, but it wasn't anything too crazy. Speaking of which, that's another point that I brought up earlier that I always see people bringing up. In fact, if I recall correctly, there was a comment on my last video that had a bunch of likes on it that said something along the lines of, character development behind a paywall is wrong, period. And like, I get that if you're mad and not really thinking much about it, it might seem like a good thing, like, oh yeah, we're paying for character development, that's wrong, screw Square, that's an idea I can get behind, but actually stop and think about it for a second. Let's say that you are a game developer working for a made-up company named, I don't know, let's say Naughty Dog, okay? Just coming up with random names off the top of my head. Now, let's also say that you just released a very successful and acclaimed game called, I don't know, maybe something like Uncharted? It's a series, so Uncharted 4? Yeah, that sounds kind of adventure-y, right? Once again, completely made up names. This is purely fictional. Now let's say that all of your fans love this new game and you wanted to go in and add an extra episode. Now, you don't want to make it affect the main story, which was about some guy named, what's the generic white boy name? Nathan Drake. Sure, let's go with that. So let's say that instead you decide to make this additional episode about a side character called Chloe. Sure, why not? And you're sitting there in the planning room with all the rest of the team. You're like, oh yeah, it's gonna be awesome. We're gonna add new gameplay features for the players to enjoy, new areas for them to explore and have fun, and we're gonna have an original story. And we were thinking of maybe even adding a little more to the characters, you know, like maybe a little character development. Or whoa, 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 whoa. Guys, don't you know that character development behind a paywall is wrong? Like, we get that you actually want to give people content that's worth the money that they're spending on it, and you want to be able to add more to these characters and give more of their story, since the players were so invested that they bothered to pay for this DLC, but nuh-uh, it's wrong. Period. So what, from now on every DLC is just supposed to be things that are purely cosmetic and don't add absolutely anything of value to the game? Because if they do, then they're ripping off the players, because it should have been included in the game from the beginning. And the same could be said for the Royal Pack. All of these features were things that they wanted to add to actually give the players something worth their money. I sincerely doubt that the Royal Pack was planned from before 15 came out and those evil developers were just waiting to release it and charge for it. No, the more likely scenario is that they heard all these people asking for a water vehicle, asking for more bosses, asking for an explorable Insomnia, and they then decided to go back and add these things. And you could say that they could have just released these as free updates instead of charging for them like the greedy scumbags that they are, but if they did, then they'd get accused of attempting to go back and finish FF15 after releasing it. It's literally a lose-lose situation for these guys. Which finally brings us to Season 2, and I know that I skipped over Comrades, but I really haven't heard too many people complaining about that, and this video is probably already going to be long enough as is, so yeah. In terms of Season 2, this is literally them going in and giving players exactly what they asked for. And I'm not just saying that because everybody said they wanted to see more of Luna in the game when it first came out. I'm not just saying that because everybody wanted to see Arden's backstory. I'm not just saying that because Episode RNA was the most popular and most requested character DLC. And I'm not even just saying that because Tabata straight up asked us if we wanted to see an alternate quote-unquote good ending for the game, and we told him that we did. I'm saying this because in update 1.10 for Final Fantasy 15, there was literally a survey in-game, like in the main menu of the game, that straight up asked players what they wanted to see, and this second season of DLC was directly based off the results of that survey. This is literally giving players exactly what they asked for, yet people are still mad at this? Now, I get that some people simply are mad at the fact that this won't be coming out until 2019, but you gotta understand that these episodes take time, okay? They take a lot of resources and money, which is why they're charging for them, and again, I'm sure that you'll be able to play through Final Fantasy 15 and enjoy it perfectly fine without the second season, just like you can right now. I get that there's some people that simply just don't care anymore, and that's a perfectly valid opinion to have. If you just don't want to play 15 anymore, then you don't have to, okay? You got the experience, and now you can move on. Just play something else. And I realize that that in and of itself is kind of hard for some people, especially those that have been waiting since 2006, which realistically, most people were not waiting for that long, okay? Like me personally, I only really got invested into Versus 13 at E3 2013. At this point, I've been waiting longer for Kingdom Hearts 3 for crying out loud. But it was a combination of those expectations and miscommunication between the developers and the players that was really 15's downfall. When you actually break it down like I did in this video, no one thing in particular is really reason enough to have so many people saying that they hate this game and that they're giving up on it. But when you combine them all together, it makes a really bad look for the fans, and at the end of the day, that's what really matters. Because even if Square wasn't just ripping people off and they were actually adding content that the fans wanted and were only adding minor updates through patches, 15 is never gonna shake that reputation of being incomplete at launch, regardless of how true or false the statement actually is. But hopefully this video was able to shed some light on all of the additional content for FF15, you know, maybe made you look at things from a bit of a different perspective. I know that for some people, no matter what I say, nothing is gonna change their minds, and that's fine, okay? Let me know your thoughts on this whole situation in the comments. Just make sure that it's constructive, okay? People who just say things like, oh, 15 was incomplete trash, Tabata should get fired, are the problem, and a huge part of the reason for this. Say why you think it was incomplete, and what about this new content is so crucial to the story that it needed to be in the initial release. I had a comment in my last video that just said, said, honestly, yeah, I'd prefer 15 to be delayed by 2 years. Why? For what? Don't just say that, give us the reasons, and be open to have someone change your mind. And that's pretty much all that I have to say for this topic. Again, sorry that I'm a bit late. I know that everyone already talked about it, but school is a thing, and finals are coming up, so I'm probably not going to be able to upload as frequently as I've been uploading, but I'll still try to make videos. In the meantime, though, you guys should check out my Kingdom Hearts 1 playthrough finale. I'm going to be streaming it here on this channel tomorrow, Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you guys have not been keeping up with my Kingdom Hearts Let's Play, well, you're in luck, because I just started uploading the archives to my archive channel, Leonhard Versus, so feel free to check those out. And as always, if you enjoy this content, be sure to consider pledging on Patreon. It really helps me out. Shout out this month goes to Planner Walk. Thanks for the support. And I guess either way, that's all that I have for you guys today. I hope that you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to blitz that like button, subscribe, and as always, stay tuned, Koopo.